The stars didn't twinkle that night, they burned. Every telescope on Earth caught the same flare, a silent scream across the void, carrying one impossible message. They found us. Humanity didn't look away. We started loading the guns. Sets up the story's premise. Humans discovering they'd been found by a hostile galactic force. The stars didn't twinkle that night, they burned. Every telescope on Earth caught the same flare, a silent scream across the void, carrying one impossible message. They found us. Humanity didn't look away. We started loading the guns. The signal came from deep in the Perseus arm, not random, not cosmic noise. It pulsed with rhythm, with purpose. 5 repeating tones. A pattern that no natural force could make. The world's observatories went quiet. The chatter of online forums, news anchors, and scientists filled the airwaves in disbelief. But it wasn't the scientists who understood first. It was the soldiers. Within hours, orbital command networks flickered to life. Defense satellites aligned, quiet codes transmitted across nations long at odds. From the ashes of rivalry came something ancient, something raw, unity born of fear. Signal origin confirmed. Non-human intelligence. Estimated vector inbound. The words no one wanted to hear. Governments scrambled to decipher intent, but the signal didn't change. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Every 11 minutes, every single Earth rotation. And then, a second signal emerged. This one wasn't a greeting. It was a map. Coordinates, leading directly to us. In the darkened control rooms of orbital defense, Captain Mara Vance stared at the blinking dot on her console. She had served through wars, droughts, collapses, but this was different. She could feel the weight of something greater than war pressing against the edges of her mind. "Ma'am," her comms officer whispered. "That last pulse, it contained an image." Mara frowned. "An image?" "Yes, ma'am. We decoded it partially. It's a human silhouette." The silence that followed was suffocating. Someone out there knew exactly who we were. Not just where Earth was, but what we looked like. Days blurred into nights. Debates raged. Do we respond? Do we hide? But humanity had never been good at hiding. From the first flame in a cave to the first rover on Mars, we had always looked into the dark and said, "Show yourself." So we answered. A pulse. A message. One word, translated across every language. "Welcome." For 72 hours, the signal ceased. And then, space itself trembled. Gravitational sensors across the solar system screamed warnings. An object large enough to eclipse a continent entered the edge of our system. No radio greeting. No lights. No sound. Just the slow, deliberate advance of something not made by human hands. Mara Vance watched it through the scope feed from the Mars Relay Array. The object's hull reflected no light, no color. It was like a void given shape. Around it, debris floated, asteroids shattered into dust. Whatever it was, it moved with intelligence, precision, intent. The alien signal began again, stronger, closer, faster. 5 tones, then silence. And for the first time in recorded history, Earth's global network went dead. "We've lost comms with Luna Base. Mars Outpost is offline. Satnet 7 isn't responding. Everything human in orbit, gone. Cut off. Disconnected." As if someone had flipped a switch and erased us from the stars. Mara gripped the console, her voice low. "Get me a visual feed. Anything. Even static." A single image flickered onto the screen. For half a second, a dark surface filled with movement, like liquid metal reshaping itself. And then, impossibly, letters formed across that alien hull. English. 3 words. "We found Earth." Mara's breath caught. The feed went black. Humanity's long dream of not being alone had finally come true. But that night, as the stars burned like torches, the dream began to feel like a curse. The invasion didn't start with bombs or ships, it started with silence. Satellites went dark. The sky turned to static. And somewhere above the clouds, alien warships drifted like sharks around a bleeding planet. The invasion didn't start with bombs or ships, it started with silence. Satellites went dark. The sky turned to static. And somewhere above the clouds, alien warships drifted like sharks around a bleeding planet. No one knew when the first ship entered orbit. It didn't glow, didn't hum, didn't move like anything designed for flight. It simply appeared, as if space itself had exhaled it into being. Across every continent, the same strange darkness fell. Phones, networks, even watches dead. Humanity, the species that never shut up, was suddenly deaf to its own voice. In New York, lights blinked out mid-sentence during an emergency broadcast. In Beijing, the skies rippled with auroras that weren't auroras. In Nairobi, soldiers fired tracer rounds into the dark, not at an enemy they could see, but at the feeling of being watched. At Orbital Command South, Captain Mara Vance stood at the edge of the observation dome, her reflection split across the glass by the curve of Earth below. Below her, the planet she'd sworn to defend, blue, fragile, alive, spun beneath the shadow of something vast and unseen. "Still no comms from Luna?" she asked. "Nothing, ma'am. Not even static. It's like the moon never existed." The technician's voice trembled. Mara didn't blame him. Silence, she realized, was worse than destruction. It meant control. And then the sound came. Low. Vibrating through bone, not air. It rolled across the planet like thunder underwater, a single, resonant pulse that made the oceans shudder and glass explode. The aliens weren't attacking. They were speaking. Not through words, but through resonance. Somewhere deep inside that vibration, hidden frequencies whispered data, patterns of motion, molecular instructions. They were scanning us. Reading us. Learning us. In bunkers and labs, humanity fought back the only way it knew how, with curiosity sharpened into defiance. Teams of linguists, coders, and AI interpreters worked sleeplessly, tracing each alien frequency, mapping their rhythm like heartbeat signatures. A breakthrough came from an unexpected place, an abandoned listening post in Greenland. Its analog equipment, untouched by digital interference, picked up fragments of alien speech. When decoded, the message was chillingly simple. Prepare extraction. Species designated, resource grade. They didn't come to talk. They came to take. Humanity had seen empires before. We'd been colonized, broken, enslaved, and every time, we clawed back stronger. The difference now was scale. This wasn't one empire against another. This was civilization itself being audited by something that didn't see us as equals, or even alive. And that's when Earth began to fight like a cornered animal. Hidden silos beneath deserts roared to life. Submarine fleets surfaced like ghosts from history. The orbital railguns, once prototypes, now salvation, began to charge. For the first time in history, humanity didn't argue, didn't hesitate. From generals to farmers, coders to scavengers, everyone became part of the same heartbeat, one that pulsed with fury, not fear. Then came the first strike. A column of light erupted from the Pacific, vaporizing everything within 1,000 kilometers. No crater. No debris. Just a hole in the ocean where existence used to be. The alien warship responsible hovered above it, indifferent. And yet, something changed. For the first time, they hesitated. Because the humans fired back. A missile, handcrafted by stubborn engineers and fueled by desperation, streaked through the void, manual guidance, no AI. It hit. Not enough to destroy, but enough to scar. The black hull of the alien vessel rippled like water struck by a hammer. And from every hidden bunker, every surviving radio, the same words echoed. Target hit. Repeat, target hit. They can bleed. That moment spread like wildfire. People wept. Soldiers laughed. And humanity, for the first time in that long, burning week, began to believe. Above the clouds, Captain Mara Vance watched the alien ship retreat into orbit, smoke trailing like an insult. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from revelation. "They thought we were resources," she whispered. Let's show them we're predators. The silence ended not because the aliens allowed it, but because humanity had just found its voice again, and the universe was about to hear us scream. By the time the galactic fleet realized Earth's armies had gone quiet, it was too late. We weren't gone, we were behind them. The hunters had just learned what human retaliation truly meant. By the time the galactic fleet realized Earth's armies had gone quiet, it was too late. We weren't gone, we were behind them. The hunters had just learned what human retaliation truly meant. Silence had been our greatest teacher. While they scanned, dissected, and cataloged us as resource grade, we learned something far more dangerous: how they think. The aliens believed in control, total, perfect control. Every ship moved in calculated patterns. Every attack followed predictability that no human strategist would ever tolerate. We saw their flaw, and we turned chaos into a weapon. Beneath the burned shell of orbit, fragments of humanity's old networks whispered to life. Ghost signals bounced through abandoned satellites, coded through static and white noise. What the aliens dismissed as background interference was command chatter. The fleets of Earth had gone dark, not destroyed, but hidden. Nuclear submarines turned space-faring with improvised thrusters. Cargo ships refitted with plasma rails and scrap armor. Even mining drones reprogrammed into guided weapons. We stopped being a planet. We became a swarm. Captain Mara Vance led the first counteroffensive, Operation Dawnfire. Her command post wasn't some sterile warship. It was a patched-together carrier built from the skeletal remains of an orbital elevator. They called it the Lazarus. As her crew strapped in, she looked out through the cracked viewport toward the alien blockade glimmering in low orbit. Rows of obsidian vessels, silent, watching, waiting. "Status?" she asked. "Engines green. Guidance unstable. But she'll fly, Captain," replied Ensign Vega, wiping sweat and grime from his brow. Mara grinned. "That's all we've ever needed, unstable things that still fly." When the Lazarus launched, every alien sensor registered a brief pulse of thermal bloom. Too small for a warship. Too messy for an organized threat. They ignored it. That mistake would cost them a fleet. As the ship ascended, hundreds of tiny projectiles, garbage, decoy signals, broken drones, scattered behind her, confusing their scans. Within hours, the humans were inside enemy formations, invisible and angry. The first strike wasn't a missile. It was a hijack. Human engineers had spent weeks dissecting alien code, tracing their signal compression methods, and embedding mimic packets into their network. Now, a single human code injection spread across the alien fleet, a line of text that no one should have been able to write. "Hello again." The alien command AI reacted instantly, rerouting power, scrambling for containment. But by then, Lazarus had already launched its real payload, 6 orbital mines disguised as asteroids, each carrying enough EMP to fry half a continent's worth of circuitry. They detonated simultaneously. In the vacuum of space, there was no sound, but humanity still imagined the roar. Alien vessels flickered, lights dying like candles in a storm. Entire formations drifted off course, their perfect geometry unraveling into chaos. Down on Earth, survivors in underground shelters watched the skies ignite. To them, it looked like falling stars, streaks of silver fire burning across the heavens. Children pointed and cheered. Old men wept. No one said, "We're winning." But everyone whispered the same word. Finally. In orbit, Mara's voice came through the static. "This is Lazarus Command. Confirm alien fleet disruption. Secondary phase begins now." "Copy, Lazarus," replied Admiral Ray in the Pacific bunker. "Begin surgical strikes. Let's remind them who started fire in the first place." From Antarctica to lunar orbit, the hidden human fleet emerged, a patchwork armada of desperation and fury. Every vessel different. Every pilot untrained. But every trigger pulled by someone who refused to surrender. The aliens reacted with mathematical precision. They adapted, recalculated, countered, but not fast enough. Because humanity didn't follow patterns. We broke them. Lazarus dove through debris fields at suicidal speed, launching warheads by hand when automation failed. Every explosion wrote a story, of defiance, of vengeance, of a species that refused to be catalogued and consumed. One alien commander, later identified through intercepted comms, sent a final transmission to his fleet before his ship disintegrated. They fight beyond reason. They are not protecting territory. They are protecting meaning. The message was logged in their archives under a new classification. Humanity, non-compliant species. Terminally defiant. As dawn broke over a battered Earth, Lazarus limped back into low orbit, hull molten, engines silent. Mara stood at the viewport, eyes hollow yet fierce. They'd won a battle, not the war. But in the silence of the aftermath, something extraordinary happened. The alien signal changed. It was no longer a pulse of dominance. It was slower. Measured. And for the first time, it sounded almost afraid. The universe had finally learned what the rest of humanity already knew. You can't invade Earth. You can only wake it up. When the last alien admiral looked upon the ruins of his empire, he didn't curse us. He whispered something no translator needed. They were never fighting for survival, they were fighting for home. And the stars burned human once again. When the last alien admiral looked upon the ruins of his empire, he didn't curse us. He whispered something no translator needed. They were never fighting for survival, they were fighting for home. And the stars burned human once again. The galaxy had gone quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. Ashes tend to settle before the next storm. Humanity's victory wasn't a celebration. It was a reckoning. Half the planet lay in ruin. Oceans bled with metallic dust. Entire cities existed only as memory. But from orbit, Earth still glowed, a bruised, defiant jewel in the dark. And surrounding it, drifting like a halo of ghosts, were the wrecks of both alien and human ships. Steel, bone, and resolve, all caught in the same silent orbit. Captain Mara Vance floated aboard Lazarus, her body weightless, her mind heavy. It had been 3 months since the Battle of the Silence. 3 months since they'd sent the aliens fleeing into the deep black. She hadn't slept since then, not truly. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard it, the echo of the alien signal. No longer a threat. Now, almost a cry. "Status report?" she murmured. "Minimal power, ma'am. Reactors dying. Communications limited to shortwave bursts." She exhaled. "That's all right. We don't need to talk to anyone right now." Her hand brushed the glass, tracing the glowing curve of Earth. "Right now, they just need to see that we're still here." In the ruins of Sydney, survivors rebuilt among glass forests, shards of skyscrapers catching sunlight like crystal cathedrals. In Cairo, engineers turned the broken pyramids into solar relays. In orbit, welders from 50 nations fused alien alloy to human ships, creating vessels no textbook could define. Humanity was not recovering. Humanity was adapting. It always had. "If the universe wants to test us," one broadcast declared, "then let the universe learn why Earth was never conquered by its own monsters." Then, on the 91st day, a transmission broke through. Faint. Fragmented. Alien. But the code was familiar. It wasn't an attack, it was coordinates. A location in deep space. The remnants of the alien fleet. They were waiting. Command convened. Scientists argued. Politicians hesitated. But the decision wasn't theirs to make anymore. It was humanity's. Fleet Lazarus, now a patchwork of scavenged glory, launched into the dark. Ships without names. Engines that coughed more than they burned. Pilots who'd buried their families and still volunteered to fly. It wasn't vengeance. It was closure. As they neared the coordinates, they saw what was left of the enemy. Dozens of ships, adrift, powerless. No formation, no command. Just floating relics of arrogance brought low. When Mara's transmission went out, her voice was calm. "To any who can hear this, we are the species you tried to catalog. We are the noise you tried to silence. We are humanity, and we don't want your extinction. We want your understanding. Static filled the response channel. Then, slowly, an alien voice replied, fragmented, hesitant. Why did you not destroy us? Mara smiled sadly. Because that's not what home does. The alien fleet never fired again. Instead, their surviving AIs began transmitting their archives. Star maps, data logs, ancient histories of 1,000 worlds long conquered. In their surrender, they gave humanity something more valuable than victory. Context. For the first time, the universe looked less like a battlefield, and more like a graveyard waiting to bloom again. Years passed. Human ships sailed beyond the solar frontier. Colonies formed on ruins and rocks once marked as incompatible. And above every settlement, etched into every hull, were the same 3 words. The message humanity sent back into the void that once threatened to consume it. We remember Earth. At the edge of known space, Captain Mara Vance stood on the deck of the rebuilt Lazarus II. The stars stretched endlessly before her, scarred, silent, beautiful. Her crew waited for orders, but she simply raised her hand and pointed forward. Set course, she said softly. Let's see what else thinks it owns the light. Engines flared. The void rippled. And as Lazarus II vanished into the dark, a trail of blue fire lingered, like a heartbeat written across the stars. The universe had taken Earth's resources, its lives, its innocence. But not its vengeance. Not its heart. Not its humanity. And now, the stars themselves carried our echo. A whisper that would outlive every empire that ever dared to call us prey.